This is Stories from the Hackery, a podcast about the students, alumni, and community members that continue to shape Nashville Software School. Nashville Software School is the nation's first nonprofit coding bootcamp where a person with aptitude and motivation can gain the skills needed for a career in tech. For more information, visit us at NashvilleSoftwareSchool.com. Welcome back to Stories from the Hackery. We've got great guests with us here today to talk a little bit about bootcamp experience, getting into software development, about using generative AI tools as both an aid to software development and an aid to learning. So Shalane Proctor is a graduate of the evening part-time web development bootcamp, cohort E, whatever. What was it, Shalane?
E19.
Oh, okay. All right. So Shalane, welcome. Thanks for coming and hanging out with us. So let's get to know Shalane here just a little bit. We always ask our guests to sort of give us their personal elevator pitch. Yeah. So who is Shalane?
Awesome. Yeah. So I am a software engineer now. My journey started when I was working in my last customer service job. I spent nearly 10 years in and out, but mostly in customer experience. And I was just getting really, really burnt out. So I decided I needed a change, and my sister had already encouraged me and already talked to me about getting into software engineering. She thought I would do really great in it because she right now is a principal software engineer. So she already knew the field, she knew what it was like, and she, as my sister, knew what kind of person I am. So she tried to encourage me to get into it. So I finally listened. So glad that I did. But we talked about it, and I started looking into some boot camp programs. NSS really stood out to me, not only because it's local to me, as well as being a nonprofit and not having pre-recorded material. Having, the live instruction was super important to me so that I could probe, for more details, ask lots of questions. So I started in 2022 at the, as you went over, E19 cohort, and the evening was crucial to me so that I could work my full-time job. Luckily, since I worked from home at the time in that customer service job, I was able to easily transition kind of from work to school and do that. And shortly after starting at NSS, I actually started to apply for jobs and network a lot in the software engineering community because I wanted to be able to get a job as quickly as possible because, again, burnt out and needed out of what I was doing. So during my time at NSS, 3 months before graduation in December of 2022, I was actually able to get my first job in software engineering as a customer experience software engineer, which really was a great blend of my experiences, with my customer experience background and my being new to software engineering. It gave me the opportunity to work professionally as a software engineer, but also be able to kind of interact with customers still as well, which admittedly it was mostly software engineering, which was a lot more preferable to me, but that was with caregiving.com. Really wonderful experience. Unfortunately, with the economy the way that it has been, I was laid off last year in June, so about a year and a half in. But because of my connections in the industry from when I was networking and continued to network, a close connection to me recommended me to My Decisive, which is where I work now. I was initially a front-end contractor there, and within a month of me being there, they were like, hey, we really like you. We think you'd be a great addition. And they added me full-time. So
Awesome.
That's where I am now, and have really been enjoying it. It's great pay and just generally an incredible vibe, and just really, really like being there. And I think as far as like elevator pitch goes, I think that kind of sums it up, at least for my software engineering experience.
Wow, that's very cool. There's a great there's at least one great lesson in there that maybe we'll loop back to. I mean, I love how you started reaching out and networking and laying the groundwork for your first job search for a developer job just as you were really getting started in the program, right?
Yeah.
Because I mean, while we certainly want people to get out and start network, it's just like people can create all kinds of reasons not to do that, right? And I'm not ready. I'm not, whatever. So I think there's a real lesson there in your experience, not just that you got your first job 3 months before you graduated, which is freaking awesome, but that you continued to network, and that early networking and the stuff you were continuing to do was obviously instrumental in getting you over the hump of a layoff and finding your next job. Man, there's a lesson there for so many people. So congratulations to you for doing that. I mean, that's, again, that's uncomfortable work for a lot of people, right? So, maybe we come back to that one. All right. So Shalane, you alluded a little bit to how you got into and why you got into software engineering, how you came across National Software School. So we kind of got introduced a little bit to your journey in software development. I'm curious, while your sister is an engineer, this was your first experience kind of going, oh, if then else, what? So, I'm curious, it's always interesting kind of when you signed up for this, what were you expecting? And then as you got into it, what were the surprises for you, right? As you got into the boot camp, as you got into learning about software development, what surprised you? Where had your original expectations been maybe spot on or maybe off base? Where'd you struggle in the learning journey? Because, I mean, I think one thing we know from running this thing for a while is everybody struggles with something, right?
Right. So that's actually really interesting. So I have a couple sides of this that I want to tackle. First of all, one of the struggles that I don't think everybody faces, and it's interesting as an adult in their 20s kind of learning, is going back to school after you've gone to like high school changes perspective. So that does kind of go into this, and I'll elaborate, but going back into school, recognizing that one of my biggest struggles was recognizing again how much I do kind of struggle in the world of being in a classroom style kind of environment, which I started finally going through kind of a self-learning journey as well as learning software engineering. And something that I didn't touch on is my neurodiversity. And that was something that I really struggled with going into NSS. And I actually got my diagnosis while being in NSS of ADHD.
Oh, wow.
And then that didn't stop. I continued not starting, but learning things about myself through that process and through software engineering as a whole. It's weird how it changes your perspective on life. But I actually went through some other stuff and got some additional information and ended up getting diagnosed AuDHD, which is autistic, and ADHD, which wasn't a huge surprise, but it was something that as an adult going into this and going through school, it was a surprise and strengthened the imposter syndrome I think a lot of people have going through as well, which was another struggle. Kind of diving back into the actual struggle of being in the class and the curriculum was the back-end development. I both loved learning what was under the hood, but also I struggled with it a lot because it's not visual like front end. I knew I was going to like front end, but learning back end and still continuing to be a full stack developer and learning new and exciting ways to visualize back end languages has
Right.
been something that has been both really fun, but was definitely a struggle going through NSS even.
Okay. So visual learning something visually that is visual in that you get rapid visual feedback right from front end development, right? You
Yes.
try
Yeah.
something, it happens, you know what happened, or at least you could see what happened. You may not know what happened, but at least you see it, right? Which, yeah, which is very different, right, than that black box in the server where it's like, oops, what now? Right. So
For sure.
that's really interesting. And to learn all of that while you were going through NSS, wow. I mean, that's a lot of moving parts all at the same time, right?
It's been a wild few years. Like it's been a lot of like self-discovery, software engineering learning, and it's been a really amazing couple of years. And it all started kind of because of my software engineering journey and getting into software development.
Wow.
One of the biggest things that I always advocate for really anybody, but especially people that are neurodiverse, because I do still network. I still talk to plenty of people. I still talk to people from E19 because I still keep in a lot of contact with them, is something that I find to keep me engaged, which is huge for me. I need a place that one cares about me but keeps me engaged, is a place that's going to continually challenge me. And where I found that is startup companies, like small companies or specifically like startup companies. There are so many moving pieces. It is a challenge. It is not easy. It is still going to give that feeling of, I have no idea what I'm doing. But it has also been such an amazing experience to grow alongside other developers, grow alongside the company. Specifically where I am now, it's constantly changing. We're constantly like, well, this isn't working. We're throwing this out. We got to start on something new. We got to make it better. We have to improve. And being a part of something like that, that keeps me continuously engaged, wants me to do research. I feel like a scientist so often. And being able to kind of work with some of my neurodiversity too, of I tend to get a little hyper fixated on stuff, and like having things that I can do that with, and having just like a team that also understands me. There's neurodiverse people scattered throughout my team that I work with now, and it's just, make sure, like, for anybody listening, if you're neurodiverse and you're the kind of person that needs that challenge, don't be scared to go for it. You'll find a place that's going to challenge you and is going to also understand the struggles that you might have too. Because I know for me personally, I can't speak for everybody, but I know for me personally, there are days that I'm going to be able to give 300%, and there are days that I can muster like 20%. But like, it, because of the way that our brains work, my sister is the same way, it is inherited, but like my sister, she's the same way. She's going to sometimes be able to give 10% and sometimes give 500%. Like, she's a machine. So it comes with the territory, but it's such a great feeling when you accomplish something and you can see something grow and be part of that growth.
So let me shift gears for a minute. So you started NSS in 2022.
Correct.
So you would have started really before the whole generative AI, ChatGPT thing got started, or maybe right around the time it got started?
So that's the fun thing, because yes. And in my last, like, I would say 3 to 4 months of being in an SS, it was when I really started seeing and using ChatGPT as a tool and really using it for the things that I still use it for today.
Okay, so you were able to start getting introduced to it before you got out of NSS.
Right.
Okay. So, well, so then talk to me a little bit about kind of what your first personal use cases were for it.
Well, so one of the things that I touched on was the fact that I kind of struggled with back end a little
Right.
bit,
Right.
which using ChatGPT to kind of help me through some of those hurdles of back end development, learning Python and Django, because it just didn't come naturally to me like it did a lot of other people. I'm good at making things pretty. It hasn't always been my strong suit to make things go vroom. So I used it a lot to be able to kind of plug in some of the concepts, reword them, like, I'm not understanding. Can you explain this to me more? And just continuing to like snowball effect questions into ChatGPT to better understand some of the concepts, because as much as I am the person likes to make things look pretty, I love to understand when, how things go from it just takes me longer to get there.
Right. Right.
So being able to understand the why, okay, but why that? But why that? But why that? And like just kind of snowballing and creating this giant snowball of answers from the questions I was asking really helped just keep me on track and understand the concepts we were going over. I know how to ask so much better than I used to. And it's developed alongside me. I don't use the same. I've deleted the memory, and I wouldn't say there's even a secret to it. It's just continuously learning its limitations as well as the help that it can bring and the questions it can answer and the questions it can't answer. There's so often two sides to the coin of assisted AI when it comes to using it as a tool. I think that it's important kind of on the other side, something that I honestly had to learn through trial and error, learn through my own journey of kind of failing in some ways, of using it too much and using it for too many things. And yeah, I definitely agree with using it for some of the things that I don't love doing all the time. Sometimes refactoring something I know that I did a little messy, I can throw it in there and it can make it cleaner code. You can't be a good engineer and use AI to write your code. It is a tool. It is not something that you can use to write your code. And the reason I say that is because, again, there were times that I let it do too much, and there's times I didn't utilize it enough. Like over the past 2 years, like I've learned so much, but it is not good to use it to write all your code. It will not work. And it's possible that in the future it's already progressively getting better, but the problem with having it write your code and the problem with using it exclusively to pair code, because I did that for a while. The company that I was at before the company I'm at now didn't have the resources to really give me the mentorship I needed. And I used ChatGPT a little too much sometimes, and I recognize that. And even me and my, in my exit interview with them, like that's something he kind of went over with me. You are an extremely talented engineer, but sometimes you should probably let yourself do more research and dig more into it than just going to ChatGPT, because at the end of the day, even with pair coding with ChatGPT, it is not the same as working with someone who has been doing this for years, talking with them, going through the problem. They're going to have the context. You can't give everything to ChatGPT because it's just not realistic. It's not going to have the context. It's not going to have the years of experience. Me and him joked, my last lead, me and him joked that ChatGPT is the all-knowing 3-year-old. Actio, as I lovingly still refer to it as, because it knows so much, but it doesn't have the complex reasoning. It doesn't have the same level of like working through problems as engineers do. It just can't do the same thing. It's great to have a coding buddy in the middle of the night, but it is not going to be the same as me going to like my senior engineer or the principal engineer or the lead engineer or even just a fellow mid-level engineer and having a conversation and being able to work through the problem together. It's not going to be the same thing, and you cannot use it as a substitute for being a dedicated and good engineer. It just will not work.
Well, and it just doesn't, it cannot know the problem the way that you know the problem that you're trying to solve, right?
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's a part of what I think you mean when you say it doesn't know the context, right? It just, once you spell it out, then it can do some work, right? But so I'm curious to hear a little bit more about some of the things that you've learned. I love the experience that you've had, right? I've loved the fact that you've been into it since you were a baby newbie developer, and you've had this experience right now in a couple of different companies. So working on two totally different sets of problems, of using it as a learning aid, right? You talked about how you used it to help you with server side, and I want to come back to where it's been helpful since then. But I love the sort of, like you said, the trial and error, and the tools have been evolving right along with you, right along with your knowledge evolving. They've been evolving, so they're not the same tool they were even 3 months ago. So, but through, I love the trial and error experimentation. Yeah, I maybe used it too much. Maybe I depended on it too much. Maybe it generates bugs sometimes. So
all the time.
All the time. Okay. So yeah, I'm curious some of the other, if there's any other aspects of, all right, I shouldn't do that anymore.
Yes. So I was learning a whole new language when I was at my first job in software engineering. I had to learn Go, and Go is a fun yeehaw cowboy language sometimes. It is a free-for-all, and it is, the problem with using ChatGPT too much is the fact that it can't have the context. It's evolving to be better, obviously, but it cannot have the same context as the engineer who wrote it. They're going to have it a different way than maybe is standard. Go has a lot of options, and people can really write it a lot of different ways. But one of the things is the fact that it can only give you what it has. It's like a very complex and thorough Google or Stack Overflow that's very specific to what you're asking it. And it can give you a lot of different examples, but it's not going to be.
Yeah. So if its training data set of Go examples isn't very big compared to the training data set of JavaScript examples or Python examples, right? Then it's, because all it can work with, again, since it's basically a probability machine, it can work with those examples it was trained with, and with a pretty new language. I mean, Go is a relatively new language, not as widely used. That your insight there is spot on. It doesn't have the information to help you anymore.
And because of the lack of information, and that's kind of what I was going on about with the, it's not going to be the same as having a true mentor or a true pair coding person, because it doesn't have the information. It's going to get better, but I don't think it's ever going to be at a point that's going to match that of another software engineer.
Well, yeah, the way I've heard it described is it's doing is it's lowering the bottom and it's raising the top of what's possible. So it's letting people who couldn't have even prototyped a solution before without going to a software engineer prototype a solution,
That's
right?
true.
So, but it's the 80-20, I've heard it described, or the 70-30 problem. It's only going to do 70% of it, and that's always been the problem with software engineering. Every time we raise the bar on the tools and we think, oh, that's going to let people who aren't professional programmers solve these problems, it lets them solve about 70% of it, but then the details, right? But it also, I think, raises, again, heard it described as raising the top, because what it's doing is it's opening up whole new categories of problems we can solve in very different ways, which is still going to take professional problem solvers. And that's where we fall back on kind of how I feel about who we're trying to train at NSS. We're not trying to train coders. We're trying to train professional problem solvers, right?
And one thing I want to say too is that, I say this a lot with the fear of AI taking over software engineers' jobs, is the fact that this is our age of automation. People were terrified of automation, but automation created new jobs that people needed to be able to work on the automated machines. And that's kind of the same thing. You need people that are able to work on AI or troubleshoot AI or troubleshoot the things AI produces. And that's kind of where this is leading, is like, like you said, it's going to be able to do maybe 70% of it, but there's still going to be that section of, what is made that needs to be, still have that human touch to it.
If we could talk a little bit about other use cases that you have found, places where you do trust it more or you do use it more, I don't know, documentation or debugging or, building your test suite out, whatever.
One thing I love using AI for is asking questions, asking all my stupid questions, quote unquote, all my stupid questions, getting it out of the way, narrowing things down and narrowing down the questions that are actually important that I can take to my senior or lead and be like, hey, so I have done all these things. I ask all these questions already. Like, basically, we don't need to touch that. I already understand where I messed up there. But this is the important thing. I understand this better now because I ask all these questions. I understand why this isn't working. Can you help me figure out the next step? Because, again, I don't think that ChatGPT is at a place yet where it can make those complex decisions and those complex problem solving. But what it can do is help me figure out the path in which that I need to go, which leads me to the correct questions that I need to ask so that I don't run the clock out on asking my lead what I need to do. Like, what is my next step? Because sometimes there are going to be moments where I forget something, I get overwhelmed, I get excited, and then I forget, oh, this isn't working. Why is it not working? Just getting frustrated. But then having and taking those frustrations first to ChatGPT as an assistant to kind of bring myself back to the actual important questions.
Yeah, that's great.
To where pair coding sessions make sense.
That's great.
And just kind of, I guess, continuing on the prompt, John, too, is just the fact that there are a lot of things that I use it for. Kind of going along with that, understanding tickets. I get a Jira ticket and it's either poorly worded or it has not a ton of context, or it might have a lot of context, but I'm like, I don't know where to start. I'll use it for kind of interpreting that and giving me a little bit more digestible information, or giving me a different wording for how that I could interpret it. Using it for technical documentation. On several occasions I've been asked to help with technical documentation, and I write things in a particular way. As a neurodivergent person, sometimes I can be a little eccentric with my language, especially in writing, because I read it a certain way, and that's not always going to read the same way to somebody else, which I will say that being in customer experience gives me a special kind of like view on that too. I have to word things specific ways, but it makes it to where I can make it more digestible to somebody that is reading it. Like, I can say, this type of tone on it, or this is for this specific kind of user. Help me word this so that I can do that. Or to be honest, sometimes I'm like, here is this big, long config file. Can you break this down for me so that I can provide it to a user? And it can do that for me so that I don't have to do that extra labor, because that costs money, doing the extra
Right,
labor for
right.
things that are kind of busy work that I don't need to do myself. It helps a lot. I will say, as a caveat to that though, check it, double check it.
Don't
It's not
trust
always
it. Yeah.
right.
Yeah. Yeah. Don't trust it. So I'm curious to get your perspective on using generative AI and use cases for generative AI for, let's stick to software engineers or software engineering learners, but neurodiverse versus neurotypical. Are they the same use cases, but maybe the patterns of how the use case is approached is different, or are there just differences in the use cases, maybe of value to a neurodivergent person versus a neurotypical person? I'm curious about, exploring that a little more, because, it's not an area where I feel very comfortable, but we do get a lot of students who are neurodivergent in some way, right? They're dyslexic, they've got AuDHD, they're on the spectrum. It's a long list, right? And all of those can present in very different ways, right? So it's something I know I'm interested in, because I've observed so much over the last, 12 or 13 years since we started NSS, to reflect on, because now you've got a couple of years of experience with these tools. What do you think?
The lens that I have is that it will really help people that are part of the neurodiverse community be able to level the playing field, but just, it really is such an amazing tool and has helped me and will continue to help me, I'm sure, in rephrasing things. And there are so many concepts. The job that I'm at now, it is a highly, highly technical job that is like, the company works in stuff that I had not even heard of until I started working there. Like, I didn't know what observability and telemetry was, like,
Oh yeah,
at
right,
all.
right.
Those concepts were completely foreign to me, and being able to put that into ChatGPT, even just reading some things online, like about observability, and then taking those paragraphs and pasting them and putting them into ChatGPT and being like, please reword this for me. Can you break this down for me? Can you give me some more in-depth stuff? Can you answer why I need to do this, why I need to do that? Like, being able to, I think, at least in my experience with other neurodiverse people just in life, not just in technology, but a lot of us want to know why things work the way they do.
Uh-huh.
Why do I need to do this? Why am I being told to do this? Why is this standard? Stuff like that, that is not always going to be just like obvious or just going to be easy to swallow, because I don't always like to be told what to do in regards to like certain things. So I'm like, I know a better way to do that. Why do I need to do it this way? Asking ChatGPT that without coming off as rude to somebody, maybe, and
Right,
being like,
right.
why would I do it that way? But asking instead of ChatGPT, why can't I do it this way? It makes some of those like hurdles make more sense, and it keeps, I would never be rude to someone anyway, but it keeps me from coming across as maybe being rude, being like, I don't like the way you did that. Let me
Uh-huh.
do it a
Right,
different way. But I
right.
think in education that it's really emphasized in regards to being able to learn the why, being able to figure out the rewording of things, and just generally having the skills, kind of going into what I think needs to be taught, is having the skills for asking the right questions. Because yeah, you can throw everything you want at ChatGPT, it doesn't care, you
Right.
know but sometimes not asking the right questions will lead you down a bad path. Even if you continue to ask questions, you're going to go in a divergent path that it isn't
Right.
going to help you. And I think that's something that needs to be taught and just will continue to be something as ChatGPT grows that can be a plus, that it can kind of help with that and kind of like narrow things down, but it's still going to be limited on what it can interpret from what you give it.
Right.
So,
Right. Well, so that's great. That's great because, you've got your personal perspective and experience, your own learning profile, your own preference profile, like all of us do, right? So,
yeah.
so where do you think you would be from a career as a software engineer perspective without this tool having come along just as you were getting into the career field? Because it's obvious that a lot of your success had nothing to do with this tool. That ChatGPT didn't get out and network. ChatGPT has not continued to connect with people, right? But so there's obviously a lot of other factors here. And so, and I'm not trying to suggest without it you wouldn't have made it
Yeah.
but I'm just sort of curious in your own mind, it has obviously been a positive factor in your journey, right?
For sure. I would think I'd still be where I am, but not potentially without significant struggles and possibly really bad burnout. Which, I mean, there's definitely going to be times where there's definitely been times over the last 2 years that I've been burnt out, that I've cried, that I have not been like
Sure.
the best that I can be, because it's just not realistic that you're going to be 100% all the time. But one of the things that I think I think I'd be a lot more beaten down. I think I would have aged a lot more than I have, because ChatGPT has helped me with.
Well, I get that. I'm only 12 years old and I've been doing this, so I get that.
But I still think I'd be where I am today without it. I think it would have just come with a cost, because there really is
interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, there's a lot that it has helped me with, and being able to. I'm not the kind of person that's going to give up, but
no, it certainly doesn't seem like that. That's for sure. What I took away from what you said was I would have got to where I am today because I wanted to do it. I would make it happen, but you were able to do it with less friction and at lower personal cost, right?
Right.
And that's, I mean, just to have something that can assist you in that fashion is fantastic. To have something that just when that hill gets steep, it's sort of, Sisyphus GPT shows up and gives you a little shove up over today's hill. I think that's a great perspective on where these tools can have value for all of us.
For sure.
I do need to say, for the benefit of our listeners, NSS does not have a financial interest in OpenAI or ChatGPT, and ChatGPT, for the purposes of this podcast, stands in for all other LLM type tools. So, on the way out, my favorite on the way out question, which I've asked everybody we've had on the podcast lately. So, what is your technology guilty pleasure?
Oh man, I have way too many computers. Way too many. I am a gamer. I do streaming. If it's not obvious by kind of my background with all the lights and stuff, I do game streaming. So I absolutely love gaming PCs and the evolution of technology with them. I have my desktop PC over here. I have a Legion handheld PC. My house has 2 PS5s. Like, I've got my work laptop. I've got just way too many computers.
So with the gaming, are you a mechanical keyboard person?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I've got this beautiful
keyboard
nice. Here that I game with. But I'm actually, funny enough, I am much more a controller girly. Like I
Ah,
much prefer my fancy little controller that I have connected. Me and my best friend, me and him play video games together. Purple snack pack. We get into a lot of shenanigans. It's an 18 plus stream just because we talk a lot of smack, but it's a fun time. But I have way too many computers for that stuff. Oh, I have another desktop underneath my desk that I haven't used, but I still have it. So,
well, yeah, you never know when you're going to need backup. I mean, come
yeah.
on.
I want to set it up for my streaming rig, and then I have my computer for my games.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, Shalane. Well, thank you. Hey, I want to thank you for spending this time with us, having a chat. Really appreciate you being willing to come on and share with us some of your experience. It's not necessarily easy to open yourself up, right? And I really appreciate you. I really appreciate you willing to share, because I think your message is a message that a lot of people could hear and should hear, because maybe they've constrained themselves.
For sure. And I think it's important. It's kind of part of networking for me, I guess, in a way, because networking isn't always just for me. It's also sometimes for other people too, like just so that I can
Yeah.
share what I've been through and like maybe help somebody else. I really
Yes.
like doing that.
Well, thank you for coming and spending the time with us. I think it was a great conversation, Shalane. And I really appreciate you. So I think that kind of wraps up this episode. Thanks for listening. You can find links for things mentioned in today's podcast in the show notes below, as they say in the podcast game. Hear more insights like these when you visit NashvilleSoftwareSchool.com.